Now let's get into the heart of
we had a lot of news there.
A lot of news. We've only got 6 minutes left.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
So, and luckily we are, because we're talking about the risks around reinstatement. As Matt said, the primacy of litigation, that is, the first thing a court looks to do is to see whether they can reinstate someone who's been unfairly
It's clear
dismissed.
it's in the legislation, unfair dismissal.
And what we've seen recently is a series of cases about reinstatement where people have just been stupid.
Yeah, I think that's right. And it ties into the zero tolerance, because what we're really seeing in these decisions is it's employers making a very classic mistake, but having much more significant consequences from this more recent trend, which is, look, the error is don't just blindly apply a set of rules without taking into consideration the specific circumstances and context of the person to whom you're applying them. So that zero tolerance approach, having whatever it might be, where we don't tolerate violence, we don't tolerate, everyone has to be vaccinated, whatever it might be, applying those blindly and then ignoring, and that's something that's consistent between these decisions we're seeing, basically ignoring the explanation given to you by the person to whom you try to apply that zero tolerance approach, will entirely undermine the validity of your reason, and importantly, will wound the person that you've terminated, but in a way where you cannot demonstrate that what they have done has actually broken the trust and confidence.
Okay, and here's the key concept. You don't have to reinstate someone where you have evidence which is both just and reasonable. So in other words, you're right, and the gravity of the situation is such that you can never put the person back in the workplace.
That's right. That's right.
Because you can never trust them not to do it again or create the same risk. So that's how you stop reinstatement. Let me I'll run through a couple of cases and I'll let Matt go crazy.
Yeah, sure.
So we've got Brass and Yarra Trams, whereas a guy who jokingly brought his knee up, he touched one guy once, got a bit of a warning, didn't touch another guy, and no one complained, But the tram people got pretty upset about it, so they sacked him.
Yeah.
But nobody complained.
No.
And so what the court said is, actually, no one's complained.
Yeah.
You were saying it's very serious, but no one's complained.
That's right.
So there's no risk putting the person back. Dumb. Okay, that's number one, done. Okay. Then we've got Miller Bates and the State of Victoria Police. That's where the police alleged misconduct by a person misusing police assets and breaching police rules, and they were wrong. It was actually a complainant, an IBAC complaint. It was having a sexual relationship with her husband. She found out about it.
It was also a police officer.
By the way, and a police officer and a bed partner. And she went and rang them, and it wasn't to do anything like give her a heads up or finding out. It was she's distressed as a wife.
Yeah, it was upset.
And so the court looked at them and said, well, everything you've said is not true. So I'm going to reinstate because I'm not going to let you treat her like this.
Yeah.
And it's a very powerful judgment criticising the police, actually.
Yeah, it was actually.
So
really
that was a fun one.
Yeah.
Then there's Longsdon and Surfside bus lines,
yeah.
which is perhaps the worst decision I've read in about 4 years.
Yeah,
Let me just, I want to
Oh, no, I'll let you do the facts on this one, Andrew. I know you were passionate about it down the green.
Queensland mandates you had to wear a mask.
On a bus, on public transport.
Transport. The Surfside said to everybody, to their employees, look, don't you try and enforce this. This is a responsibility of the person. We don't want to be involved in enforcement. Well, that's called aiding and abetting a crime. Anyway, they said that. So let's talk about the law. She says someone gets on a bus, they won't wear a mask. She tells them they abuse her. She stops the bus and asks them to get off.
Yeah.
The decision doesn't deal with actually what the law is, which is the law is she was quite right to stop the bus and tell the person to get off because she was protecting both safety and enforcing a mandate.
Yeah.
Their direction not to do it was an unlawful direction. So therefore, they could never win this case if it was actually argued properly or heard properly because it was an unlawful, not a reasonable direction. Therefore, they could never terminate.
That's right.
And she was always doing the lawful thing as required by law.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, the court didn't address those, obviously.
No, not at all. Didn't actually get down into that. And look, thankfully,
legal basis.
No, I mean, it would have been again. And look, one of the consistent things through a lot of these cases is that there's not a presence. They're unrepresented applicants. So of course, they're not running it around the lawful and reasonable direction aspect. But that would have been the key element of this case. I mean, the commissioner got there in a different way anyway, which was to say that, well, actually, irrespective of this whole thing about the masks part, and whether a direction about it was lawful or not, the swearing that the passenger did towards the bus driver was sufficient to justify her actions to stop the bus.
Can I just tell you, can anyone smell law in that? I can't.
No,
Okay, look, the next
no.
one is reinstatement. And
Yeah,
Matt,
so we had an interesting one in the anti-vax context. So what we had really
and
happened.
you're not allowed to
here-
call them cookies. You told me that.
No, it was cookers, not cookies.
Okay,
Sorry.
Sorry, I only learnt that today.
Cookies.
That I'm not allowed, that's a social origin risk.
I mean, I think you should. I mean, they absolutely
No,
are.
stay where
No, either way. So in this one, it was very interesting because you had an employee, it was the Northern Territory firefighter on leave before the mandate came into place. Mandate comes into place while they're on leave on a really extended period of leave. Responds to the email that they get saying you got to send us the vax certificate, and he says, "Well, look, doesn't actually say in the email that he is or isn't vaccinated." He said, "Yeah, I'm happy to confirm my vaccination status, but I'm on leave. Are you directing me back to work, or what's the situation here?" And again, zero tolerance sort of approach here. They don't actually deal with what he says at all. They just go, "You haven't provided it in time." They terminate his employment. So by the time it goes through the commission, when it comes to the question of reinstatement, the commission says, "Well, this wasn't actually a valid reason. I mean, yes, the mandate was in force, but you didn't actually ask this guy to come back to the workplace. And two, you just entirely ignored what he had to say. And now the mandate's not in place, so I'll reinstate him." And he was vaccinated anyway.
There you go.
Yeah.
So those 4 cases we gave you
Yeah.
show that people who do stupid things
Yep.
fail to get it right
Yep.
and then continue to prosecute a dumb case.
That's
We'll end
Yeah.
up with reinstatement.
Yeah.
Does that help you? Because that's how it works.
Yeah. I think that's the key part. Yeah. And then look, it ties back into the zero tolerance because if you're doing it in a dumb way and you're doing it in a dumb way consistently,
And you get it
across
wrong.
everyone,
And you get it wrong.
you're going to keep getting it wrong.
So let's just tidy up. Zero tolerance can work where it's what's called a golden rule.
That's right. Yeah.
So that gets over harshness, it gets over
Yes,
everything. If there is
yeah.
such a profound risk in a business and you say, look, this is a golden rule,
Mm,
you will not
Mm.
work unharnessed on
Yeah.
heights.
that's right.
Okay, golden
Yeah.
rule.
Safety.
And so then you go and train everybody and you
Yep.
explain why that's the case. You
Mhm.
explain the level of risk. And on a regular basis, you re-communicate it
Yep.
and you deal with it aggressively on every
Mhm,
occasion it
mhm,
comes up,
mhm.
irrespective of who the person is.
Mhm.
Then you're not going to have this fight because
Mhm.
it is a golden rule built on rock,
Yeah.
not sand.
And I think using a rock and sand example, that's why in the Logston and Surfside bus company one, it was literally written in whiteboard marker on a whiteboard to say, don't enforce the mask mandate. So a really good example of the difference in golden rule.
Okay.